Hi guys and welcome to another video. Now this video has been requested by a lot of people and it's an updated guide for setting up an OpenVPN server on Unraid as a Docker container. It goes through setting up everything on the server and also it shows how to connect using Windows, macOS, Linux, iOS and Android clients. Sounds interesting? Let's get started. Wow, so where does the time go? Now it seems like only yesterday that I made a video on Linux Server's excellent OpenVPN-as container. But things have changed since my last tutorial, so it warrants a new tutorial for 2019 to bring us up to date with setting up the OpenVPN-as on our Unraid server. So quickly before we start, let's just talk about what an OpenVPN server is. Well, an OpenVPN server is something that will let you connect from a remote location into the network where the OpenVPN server is. And it does this by creating a secure tunnel through the internet from one location to the other. So for us Unraiders, that probably means being able to connect back to your home network from somewhere else, maybe from work, school, or even the local coffee shop. Now of course using an OpenVPN server will allow you to connect to your Unraid server securely when you're away, but also it'll do a lot more than that. It will allow you to connect to your network, and as such any device that you could normally connect to on your network when you're at home. That includes all of your files and shares on the server, and also you can actually connect to the internet through your home internet connection. Now you might wonder why you want to do this. Well, you might need to actually have your IP address appearing that you're in the country and in the place that you normally live. Say you've gone away on holiday somewhere and you want to watch some catch-up TV for instance. In the UK I might want to watch iPlayer, and that's geo-locked for only inside of the UK. And the BBC, they also try and stop you watching it through VPNs, so all of the commercial VPNs, they tend to block large groups of IP addresses that they use. But obviously they're never going to block your IP address because you're not a commercial VPN. Now I must admit I haven't tried using my OpenVPN server to do this, but theoretically it should work. And if any of you guys have done it, then please comment below and let us know if it works. So anyway, that's a few things you can use an OpenVPN for. You can basically think of it as a really long invisible LAN cable. Okay, that's enough talking about OpenVPN. Let's crack on and get things set up now. Before we install a container, we are going to have to actually go into our internet router and we're going to need to forward a port. For this tutorial we're going to need to forward port 1194, and that's going to have to be forwarded to the IP address that your Unraid server is on. So if your Unraid server isn't set to a static IP address, then I really suggest you do that, because you don't want the IP address of your server ever changing. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to port forward on an old Netgear router here. All routers will probably be a bit different, but the principle is going to be pretty much the same. You're probably going to find a port forwarding setting somewhere in the advanced settings on the web UI, so have a poke around and see if you can find the section called port forwarding. Sometimes they might call it virtual server. So here I'm going to click on the add button to add a service. I'm going to give it a name called OpenVPN. For the service type I'm going to choose UDP, and the port number is 1194, so that needs to be set for the starting and the ending port. And you need to direct that traffic through to the IP address of your Unraid server. Your IP address most likely will be different to the demonstration one that I'm popping in here. I'm forwarding across to 192.168.0.199. Okay, so once you've set up your port forwarding, then you're ready to install a container. So let's now go and do that next. Okay, so let's install a container. So let's head over to the Apps tab and do a search for OpenVPN-as. And this is the container we want here, the one by Linux Server. And click on the icon to install, and that will bring us to the container template. Now we can leave everything as default here. Just one thing to check, that the network type set to bridge. We need that setting as that. And all of these port numbers can be left as is. So then click on to apply, and then wait for it to pull down the container. Once finished, click on done, and then go back to the Docker tab, and then click onto the container and go to Web UI. When you open a Web UI, you'll see it says your connection is not private. Now don't worry about that, that's perfectly normal. So just click onto Advanced and then proceed to the address. Okay, so then we're going to come into a login page. So for the username, we're going to type admin, and the password, we're going to type password, and click sign in. We need to agree to the user license, and then you'll see this page. And this page gives us a status overview of the server as it is. And you can see here that the server name is just an IP address. Now this is going to be the first thing that we're going to have to change. So let's click on configuration and then network settings. So we just need to delete the IP address that we can see here. And that's because this IP address is just the local IP address of the container. And the OpenVPN server will use the IP address or hostname that we put in here to be able to make the connection when we're outside of our own LAN. So that means we have to put in the IP address that's assigned to us by our ISP, so our WAN IP address. Now most of us will have a dynamically assigned IP. That means it can change from time to time. It's not always going to be the same. So the best thing to do is to set up a DNS tracker, something like DDNS, and what this will do is give you a host name that always points through to your WAN IP address. So that way, if your dynamic IP address changes, it doesn't matter. Now it's really easy to set up DDNS, it only takes a few minutes, and I made a video about how to do that a while ago, and you can watch that here. So for hostname here, I'm putting in unraidserver.duckdns.org, which will point through to my IP address. Now underneath in interface and IP addresses, we want to make sure that listen on all interfaces is selected as yes. So next, scrolling down to protocol, I'm going to change protocol from both just to UDP. Having switched it to UDP, it leaves the wrong port number here, leaving the TCP port, so we need to change this port number to 1194. Which is the port that we're going to use for UDP. Now these are the only changes that we need to make on this page, so we can scroll down to the bottom and click on Save Settings, and then here click on Update Running Server. Oh, and so it says this site can't be reached. Well, if you see that, then just refresh the page, and I'm going to have to log back in. Now we can see on the status page it says the server name, and then that's got my host name, and we can see it's accepting VPN connections on all of the interfaces. And here it says that we're using UDP and port 1194. So that's nearly all of the configuration on the network side set up. We want to go back to configuration, and now we want to go to VPN settings. Okay, so on the VPN settings page, let's scroll down a bit until we come to this part, routing here. Now this is important. You'll see a line that probably begins with 172. Now underneath this line, we need to put the IP range which our network's on. And that's because what we add here defines what we're allowed to connect to once we're connected to the VPN. So if we want to be able to connect to other devices on our network, then we must specify our network details here. Now you can see at the top here that my IP for this server is 10.10.20.199. So my IP address range will be 10.10.20.0 and then /24. Now the 0 and /24 basically means anything between 1 and 254. It's just a different way of writing it. So if the IP address of your server at home was 192.168.1.100, then your subnet would be written as 192.168.1.0/24. And you can see with my subnet 10.10.20.0/24, well, it's not a very common subnet, and there's a good reason that I choose not to use a common subnet. And that's because when you're on the road and want to be connecting back to your server, you're probably going to be doing that from a lot of different places. And the chances are that these places, such as an internet cafe somewhere, is going to be using common subnets. So their router may well have an IP address of 192.168.1.1. And if your router at home's got the same IP address, well, this can cause problems. Now for instance, say you wanted to log into the web UI of your router at home. Well, that's got the same IP address as the one in the internet cafe, so which one will your computer connect to? So obviously you can't change the subnet which the internet cafe uses, but you can change yours at home if you plan to do so, and do it before you go away. Yeah, I know it's a pain changing the IP address of your router and all the other devices you might have on your network, but it really is well worth it to save having problems like this if you're connecting back home on a VPN. Okay, so let's get back to setting up our configuration. So really there's nothing else we need to set up on this page. There's various other options that you can, such as whether internet traffic can be routed through the VPN. I just normally leave all of this as default. So when you're happy with your configuration, just scroll down to the bottom of the page and click Save Settings, and then hit Update Running Server. So now that's everything set up on the kind of network and VPN side that we need to do. So now we need to create a user to be able to connect to the VPN. So we're going to click onto User Management and then go to User Permissions, and here we can add a new user. So I'm going to add one called Ed, and I want it to be an administrator. And here we've got a tick box where we can allow auto login. What that means is we can log in just with the OpenVPN file, and we don't actually need to put a username and password in. I'm going to check this, but it isn't as secure having this checked, so that's one thing to think about. And then click onto More Settings here, and now I'm going to put in a password. I'm going to leave everything else as default here, so let's go down to the bottom and click Save Settings. And again, Update Running Server. Okay, so let's go back to our status page and look at our status overview. There's our server name. We're accepting VPN client connections on all interfaces, and we're using UDP and port 1194. And we've set up a user, so that's everything server side that we need to do. So now let's go on to the next stage and have a look at how we connect to the server when using a client. Okay, so now I'm going to log out, and I don't want to be at the admin login page. I just want to be at the regular login page. So at the top here, I'm just going to remove the /admin part of the address. So we're just going to the IP address and then :943. And you see that brings us to a different login page. And now I'm going to log in with the user that I just created. So that's Ed and my password. And then I'm going to click on login. That brings us to a page where we can download the OpenVPN Connect app for various different operating systems. You can download one for Windows, macOS, Android, iOS and Linux. When you download the OpenVPN Connect app for either Windows or macOS, it already has the connection profile for the specific user embedded into it for ease of use. But if you're using Linux, Android or iOS, you'll need to manually add the connection profile to whatever OpenVPN client app that you're going to be using. And in fact, on macOS and Windows, I think it best not to use the OpenVPN Connect app. I think there's better options out there. So even if using Windows or macOS, I'd suggest downloading the connection profile and setting it up manually instead, and we'll be looking at that a bit later in the video as well. So to download the connection profile, you download the file underneath called yourself. And you can see here under connection profiles, I've got two here. I've got the user lock profile and the auto login profile. The one you can see here that says yourself user lock profile. This is a profile which will require the username and password that you set up for the user earlier on. And the one underneath where it says yourself auto login profile. Now you'll only see the auto login profile if that's been enabled for the user when you set it up earlier. And because I enabled that on my profile, that's the one I'm going to download now. And we can see here it's downloaded and it's called client.ovpn. And this OVPN file will work on any operating system whereby you can use an OpenVPN client app. So after downloading it, it's probably easier just to put it on the desktop, and then we can import it into the OpenVPN client from there. But if you're using Android or iOS, obviously you've got to get the file across onto your phone, and the easiest way to do it is probably to just email it to yourself and then download it on the phone. And if you've got any cloud services on your phone, such as maybe Nextcloud or Dropbox, then you can send it across to the phone that way as well. But to start with, let's look at connecting to the OpenVPN server using Windows. Okay, so I'm logged into the same page as before with my user, and first I'm going to download the OpenVPN Connect for Windows and place that on the desktop. Okay, and so next I'm going to download the auto login profile and also put that on the desktop. Okay, so first let's look at the easy way of installing OpenVPN and use the OpenVPN Connect app. So basically just install it, click yes and next to everything it asks. When it's finished installing, you'll see the OpenVPN Connect app on the desktop, just double click that. If it asks you about using an unidentified profile, well just click yes to that. And then if we go down to the bottom right hand side on the Windows toolbar, we can see the OpenVPN Connect icon. So we're going to go to there and then just right click it, and then from here you can see the various options to connect and disconnect from the VPN, etc. Anyway, like I said, this isn't my preferred way to connect a Windows client to the VPN, so I'm going to quickly uninstall the OpenVPN Connect app. So with that removed, now I'm going to open my browser and do a search for OpenVPN download. And I'm going to click on the community downloads here and then scroll down the page and download the Windows 10 installer here. And again, once it's downloaded, I'm just going to put it onto the desktop and close the browser window and then double click the icon to install it. Again, you just click yes to everything and next to install. Then once it's installed, click on the OpenVPN GUI button here. It will warn us that it can't find a configuration file. That's normal because we haven't actually put one in yet. So just click on OK. Then go down to the bottom right hand corner and click the up arrow, and you can see the OpenVPN icon here. Just right click it and then click import file. Then let's browse to the desktop, and then I'm going to import the client file here and click open. Then go back down to the OpenVPN icon in the bottom right hand corner, right click it and then click on to connect. And once the VPN connection's been established, you see in the bottom right hand corner it says client now connected. So let's test and see what we can do with this VPN. Let's open up a browser and I'm going to put in the local IP address of a server that's on the other end of the VPN. So 192.168.0.199. Now you may be wondering why I'm logging into 192.168.0.199 when earlier in the video when I set up the OpenVPN server, my network range was 10.10.20.0/24. Now the reason is this VPN server that I'm remoting into isn't the one that I set up earlier in the video. I set this one up about a week ago, knowing that I'll be logging into it from home for demonstrating how to do so in the video. And after the video's made, I'm going to delete the VPN server anyway. So for these purposes, it wasn't really worth changing all of the IP address range in the remote location, because my home IP address range is totally different anyway. So with that said, let's move on, and I'm into the web UI. I can see here that there hasn't been a parity check run for a while, so I'm going to schedule one to run right now. So basically you've got access to your server and anything else on the network on the other end of the VPN, just as you would as if you were in the same room connected by a LAN cable. I can also connect to the internet router at this location as well, and that's on an IP address of 192.168.0.1. So I'm into the Netgear router at the remote location, and if I want to log into my own router, because I'm on two different subnets, I can easily log into mine as well, and mine's on 10.10.20.1 and I'm using pfSense. Okay, so it's easy to access things through the web browser in the remote location, but how about connecting to files? Well, we can easily connect to the shares on an Unraid server over OpenVPN if we map a network drive to them. So on Windows, go to this PC, then map network drive, and for the folder put //, then the IP address of the server, and for me here this is 192.168.0.199. Then after the IP address put another / and then the name of the share, mine's called data, and then click on to finish. And that will map a network drive over the OpenVPN connection to that share on the server where you'll have access to those files. Okay, so that's connecting to the OpenVPN server using Windows. So now let's do exactly the same on macOS. So again, we'll go back to the web page to be able to download the OpenVPN Connect files and the connection profiles. And I'm going to download the OpenVPN Connect for macOS. And also I'm going to download my auto login profile here. And again, I'm going to drag these files and put them on my desktop. So first, let's connect to the OpenVPN server, just using the standard OpenVPN-as Connect software. Just double click on the icon to install, and then click continue and next, etc. Then once it's installed, if you go up to the top right hand corner, you're going to see the OpenVPN-as icon there. And the same as in the Windows client, you'll get the same options to be able to connect and disconnect to the OpenVPN server, etc. But rather than using the OpenVPN-as Connect software, on macOS I really recommend using some software called TunnelBlick. So if you go to a browser and just search up TunnelBlick, and then click onto Downloads, and download the latest stable version. Again, I'm going to put this file onto my desktop, and close the browser window. So after you've downloaded the software, just install it, and again just go through everything, clicking next, 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 yes, 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 etc. Then once the program's installed, in the top right hand corner you'll see the icon for TunnelBlick, so if you just click onto that. Now if you click onto add VPN, it just brings up a dialog box that tells you how to add the VPN service. So just close this box and then go back, then click onto VPN details and then drag the client.ovpn file across over into the left hand column here, and then just drop it here to install. Then with the profile installed, just to connect to the VPN, we just click onto the connect button here. Then once it's connected, in the top right hand corner you'll see it says connected. Now if we open a web browser, we can browse through to various things on the network. So here we are on the web UI of the Unraid server that's running the OpenVPN-as container. And of course we can browse around to various different pages, open and run Docker containers, that kind of thing. And if we want to connect to a file on the server, then we just go to go and then connect to server. Then we just put in smb:// then the IP address of the server to connect straight through to that. And then click on to connect. Then we can connect as a registered user or guest. I'm going to choose guest. Then we'll see a list of shares that are available on the server. We just choose the one we want to connect to and click OK. And then we have access to those files in that share. Okay, so that's it with connecting to the OpenVPN using macOS. So now let's go across onto a Linux distro and do the same over there. And here I'm running Ubuntu Mate, and we're back on the same page to be able to download a connection profile. And again, I'm going to download the auto login one. And again, just for ease of use, I'm going to pop the file onto my desktop. So with that file put onto the desktop, I'm now going to go across to the top right hand side, and I'm going to click onto the network icon, the two up and down arrows here. And going down to where it says network connections, it says add a VPN connection. Now a lot of people get confused and think that's a button where you're meant to add the VPN connection, but it's actually telling you you don't have any VPN connections to connect to, and it's telling you to actually add one. And to do that we need to go down to edit connections, then click on the green plus button, and then from the drop down menu here go right down to the bottom and click import a saved VPN configuration and click on to create. Then all we need to do now is browse to the desktop and to where we've got the client.ovpn file and select that. Then just click on to save. And now to connect to this VPN, we just go back up to the network icon at the top and select VPN connections, and then just go across and click on client on the left hand side. And once the connection's established, you'll see a message pop up at the top. And now we're connected to the network, and so of course we can browse to the remote Unraid server, etc. So it's very easy to connect to a VPN using Ubuntu Mate. So now let's go and have a look at how we connect to the VPN using a cell phone. Now we can connect using iOS and Android, and the process is so similar that I'm going to go through doing both of them at the same time. Okay, so this phone on the left, this is my Android phone, and the phone on the right, this is a phone I've borrowed off my girlfriend. I managed to get it off her for 5 minutes for the video, and that's her iPhone. So on the Android phone, I'm going to go to the Google Play Store, and on the Apple phone, I'm going to go to the Apple App Store. So on your phone, do a search for OpenVPN, and then install the OpenVPN Connect app. Then once it's installed, just open up the app and it will bring you to this page here, and you just want to click onto OVPN profile, connect with .ovpn file. So obviously we're going to need the .ovpn file on our phone, so the easiest way to do that is just email it to ourselves and open it up on the phone. Okay, and so here's the email across on my Android phone, and I'm going to download the attachment into my downloads. And here's the email on the iOS phone, and on iOS it's super easy. You just click onto the attachment and click copy to OpenVPN. Then across on Android, after we've downloaded the attachment, we just browse through to the location where our downloads are, and there's the file there, so I'm just going to click onto that one, the client.ovpn. Then once you've imported the OVPN file, you can start up the connection. You may get a couple of warnings, you just have to click yes or OK to continue, and then you're connected to the VPN. Okay, and so now your phone's connected onto the network, and you can browse things on your home network and do the same as you can on a PC. Now before we wrap this up, I just want you to be aware that testing the VPN when you set it up can be difficult. Now you're not going to be able to make a VPN connection to your server if you're on the same network. You need to be elsewhere. Now an easy way to do this is to use your cell phone, connected to a 4G network, etc. Maybe make a hotspot and connect your laptop to it and then try connecting. Or you could use a TeamViewer connection to another computer elsewhere, and then set up the client from that and test that everything's working. So there we are, that brings us to the end of another video. Well, if you like this video guys, then please hit that like button, and if you want to see more videos from me, then please subscribe to the channel. Now I want to give a really big thanks to all of my supporters and patrons out there. Thank you so much guys, I really appreciate it. It's you guys that make these videos possible. Anyway, it's time for me to go now, but whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good and I'll catch you in the next video.